Everything is easy when you are busy, but nothing is easy when you are lazy. I feel very privileged to invite Sri Devi Dayal, founder and incumbent president, Kerala Commerce Forum, CBSE resource person, and master trainer in accountancy for inauguration.
Respected Principal Manoj Mohan sir, Vice Principal Srija ma'am, Program Coordinator Sri Kumar sir, Department of Commerce HOD Dhanya ma'am, Dr. Priyesh sir, Assistant Professor, University of Kerala, who will be presenting the paper today in detail, and my dear students of the Department of Commerce and Social Science of Parama, Bhattara, Kendriya, Vidyalayam. Warm good morning to all of you and happy 73rd Republic Day of India. Thank you all. And I am very fascinated and indeed very happy to know that Parama Bhattara Kendriya Vidyalaya Social Science Department has been organizing a Swadeshi Sramata Webinar', which is very, very relevant in the present day economy, especially of Indian economy, growth and development. And the very first purpose and objective of this Sramata webinar, Swadeshi Sramata. Now I remember what happened in 1905 as part of our India's freedom struggle, that is Swadeshi movement, where all Indians were asked to boycott British goods and use only Swadeshi products. Like that, so to strengthen the Indian economy and to reduce the rate of unemployment, the major project is, of course, starting our own entrepreneurship and start our own industries and businesses. I remember when I was studying for pre-degree, and my time during that years, there were no +2, +1 classes, it was pre-degree. I know Priyesh sir and all might have studied only +2, +1. He's quite young. Yes, sir, isn't it? Yes, sir. Okay. So basically, yeah, my commerce professor told in the first class that I am teaching you commerce not to become an accountant or an employee of in an organization, but to be an entrepreneur. Start your own business. Give employment rather than begging for employment. Don't be job seekers, but be job givers. That was his advice. So, keeping in still that words are reverberating in my heart. And always I used to advise my children also, commerce children also, about this importance of starting our own project and our own businesses. That is what Prime Minister Narendra Modi also had highlighted by launching Atmanirbhar Bharat. That is Atmanirbhar self-reliance. India's self-reliance program will not be a self-centered one, but we will take care of the cooperation, happiness, and peace of the world also. So it is not only self-centered, but we extend to the whole world also. Then only we are fulfilling our objective to the nation as well as to the entire world economy. 2020 March, the dawn, the year 2020 dawn was, of course, the year of darkness. And that darkness is still continuing because of the virus emanated, made and spread in the abominable, nefarious, obnoxious China, which is always encroaching our boundaries and territories in Arunachal Pradesh and all. And that virus spread from there, spread to all the countries in the world. And India too has not been unscathed. We know to face this, governments all over the world, all the countries declared lockout, shut down, closed down industries, offices, service sector, and even travel restrictions. Flights were cancelled, trains were cancelled. And because as a sequel to this, what happened? Many people lost their employment. As a whole in the world, it is said that 140 million people were pushed down into, plunged into sheer poverty. And lakhs of people lost their employment. Hundreds of people committed suicide. And the world economy shrunk to about 4.4%. And the growth in the world economy was negative 5%. Whereas USA, the negative GDP rate, growth rate was 3.5%, limited to. But our India, we know, we had a negative GDP growth rate of 8%, minus 8% was the growth rate. So the worst affected sectors were, you know, the service sector, the travel sector, the hospitality sector, tourism industry, and MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. And because of the various measures taken by the various governments, and various governments pushed pumped so much of money into the system to revive, to recoup, for a resilience recovery from this particular disaster, COVID pandemic. As a result, slowly, even now during the third wave, Omicron variant, but the world economy has been recovering. As I told you, a resilient recovery is seen. Now, the world economy, the growth rate now recorded at 5%, 5.6%. It is said that it will grow up to 6%. Whereas India's GDP now growing by 6.6%. That is the 2021 quarter, last quarter, October to December quarter, we grew 6.6%, and it's expected that the 2022 it will be roughly 6%, and 22-23 we will be growing by 9.2%. It has been predicted, and all economies are growing. America, USA, UK, everywhere it is growing, and India, because of the equanimity, because of the courage, the fortitude, the hegemony, the sagacity, the vision, the dedication of our Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji, India could recover fast from this. And as I told you, now our growth rate is almost more than 6%. And India had this corona affected problem were not there. Definitely, Prime Minister was planning to make India the 5th largest economy, to make a 5 trillion economy. But because of that, it went back. But still, now India, we are a 3.1 trillion economy. India is a 3.1 trillion economy, just below Japan and Germany. That is USA, China. Then we know that Japan and Germany come, that is just UK is coming the 5th position at present, and India is the 6th one. But now we are going to surpass the UK because it is only 3.4 trillion economy. We have already reached 3.1 trillion economy, and therefore we will be definitely going to surpass UK, and UK will be pushed down to 6th position, and India will be coming to the 5th position in the world economic development scenario. And to recoup all this, and to bring our economy back to the system, our government launched, that is called Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat, a self-reliant India. I told you earlier that by launching this self-reliant India program, Prime Minister said that it is not self-centered. And he also told that is vocal and local. That means locally you make the products and use it locally instead of depending foreign countries or import and all, or corporates, big corporates and all. We can start our own products. We can start our own companies. We can make locally, very small. That is why MSMEs are given much more importance. You know very well, you have studied in business studies, economics, what is MSME, micro, small and medium enterprises. As part of this MSME program, Prime Minister and Government of India declared that the self-reliant India has five pillars, known as economy is the main pillar. The infrastructure is the next pillar. Demographic situation, that is a vibrant demography India has. Our population, we are the second most populous country in the world, the seventh largest country in the world, the second most populous, and the largest democratic country in the world. So our demography is very vibrant. Most of our population consists of youngsters. Therefore, we can create wonders according to Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. And he says about system as a main pillar. Our system should be based on technical development, technological development. And also he is giving much importance for digital India. If you go to a very small shop, even a pettikada, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ റോഡ് സൈഡിൽ വെച്ചിരുന്ന street vendors are having a Paytm or Google Pay scan, and we can scan and make the payment there. Digital payment, digital currency, plastic currency, and all coming under that system development. And he also says that as the fifth pillar of Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is demand and supply. That is demand and supply chain. The entire demand for the products from the country must be met from India itself, and there should be a happy balancing of demand and supply in the country. And 5 tranches of Atmanirbhar Bharat was launched. According to this, the first one, the most important, is business and MSME. As a part of it, we redefined MSME. Now, MSME is an organization that is micro organization, is a micro enterprises, small enterprises, medium enterprises. If you invest 1 crore rupees and your annual turnover is less than 5 crore, you will be coming under a micro enterprise. And if your investment is 10 crore and annual turnover is less than 50 crores, then you will be coming under the definition of a small scale enterprise. And if your investment is 20 crores and your annual turnover is 100 crores, turnover, your commerce children, I need not explain what is turnover, your sales, then you will be coming under a medium enterprise business group. That is a redefinition, new definition of MSMEs. And MSMEs, to bring back the MSMEs back to the system, that is to recoup from the blow given by this corona pandemic. Under Atmanirbhar Bharat, Government of India launched a program of 20,000 lakh crores. This much money will be pumped into the economy, has been pumped into the economy. Out of this, 3 lakh crore will be used exclusive for MSEs to give collateral-free loans. Collateral-free loan. collateral free, you know that, without any collateral security. Usually from a bank, if you want to take a loan, you have to give a collateral security. Some security, your land, property, house, building, your machinery, stock, whatever be land to be given as security. But without giving any security, our MSMEs have been getting up to 3 lakh, that is the total amount, 3 lakh crores collateral free loan. And we have 20,000 crore bifurcated for giving subordinate debt to MSMEs. Another 50,000 crores have been earmarked for infusing equity capital, equity share capital into the MSME business group. And another important and major announcement which I personally support maximum, which point I liked very much, is that no global tender from the part of the government for all orders from the government for any work to execute or for any purchase to be made by the government. No global tender for a purchase or for an order up to 200 crores. So that what is going to happen, this 200 crore business of the government is going to be in the hands of the industries or the business people, enterprises, or the entrepreneurs of India. Inside India, it will come. So that is, of course, a visionary program, development announcement made by Prime Minister by launching this Apana Bharath. And now the recovery has been going on. I told you that infrastructure has been growing. World infrastructure economy 5.4%. India is growing 6.6%. And because this resilient recovery, we all are very happy, even though still this pandemic this Omicron variant is continuing, but it is expected that it will be settled down by the end of March 2022. After that, we are going to have a very bright India, a very bright world where we can go and meet each other, go for a tour, world tour, wherever you want, go out without any fear. You can remove the mask and no social distancing and all. And for that country, that India, so that India we are aiming for. So as Dr. Martin Luther King once said, I have a dream today that my 4 little children will live in a nation where they are not judged by the color of the skin, but the content of their character. I have a dream today that freedom ring from the Allegheny Heights of Pennsylvania, that freedom ring from the mountains of Colorado. Like that, I have a dream that my India, I am telling on this 73rd Republic Day, that a corona-free India, where there is 0 unemployment rate, where there is 0 poverty, where there is advanced development, where there is complete peace and harmony, and all the people are living in happy situation, and India is one among the developed nation soon. That is my dream. I call upon all the children who are listening to this program to do justice to this program. That is, to benefit out of that, be an entrepreneur. Start your own, make your own startups. I know. So when I understand that one ex-student of Parama Bhattara, Kendriya Vidyalayam is an entrepreneur. I congratulate him. There are so many. One of my students is an entrepreneur and startup. He is the UN runner-up of the best startup entrepreneur. His name is Kalidasan. So that should be the spirit of the commerce children. So I wish all the best to all of you, and I also express my gratitude to the management of Parama Bhattara, to Sri Kumar sir, Danya ma'am. She is my student. Affectionately, I call her Danya. Okay, for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts on this day with all my dear children. Thank you once again. God bless you.
To include in students about world's economy before and after the COVID-19 pandemic. The country is facing recession during this period and the GDP rate of the country. The schemes of NIT, Ayok after COVID-19, our Prime Minister announced Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. Now I invite our key speaker, Dr. Priya CA, Associate Professor, Department of Economic University College, Trivandrum, for sharing his valuable thoughts and presentation on the topic After COVID-19, the World's Economy and Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Thank you, Nandana. Good morning to you all. Respected Principal, Vice Principal, Head of the Department of Commerce, Sri Kumar sir, who invited me for this program, Speaker Vidyalayam sir, and teachers and students of Parama Bhattara, Kendriya Vidyalayam, thank you one and all. Here to place this is Sri Swadeshi Sramata Sankalp, that program. So we are focusing our discussion on Atmanirbhar Bharat. Prior to this, discussing in detail Atmanirbhar Bharat, we should have a relook. You should attempt for a rediscovering our India's tradition, economic history, our entrepreneurship in the past, our contribution to world GDP, global export, in global industry, so that we should make an attempt to rediscover ourselves. There was an economic historian, Agnes Madison, who published a book in a study in 2000, beginning of this millennium. And this study was commissioned by OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. That study concludes the period of economic growth contribution of many countries for a long period of 1915 years, almost 2000 years history, world economic history, was studied and analyzed by A. Madison in his book, World Economy, A Millennium Perspective. That book is available in online. In that book, he states very categorically that India and China, two economies in the world, had a contribution of 50% of global production for a whole period from zero common era to 1750. For this long period of 1750 years, these two countries, India and China, had 50% share. India had 25% and China had 25%. So 50% share was enjoyed by these two countries. By the end of 1750, in the ending years, America nowhere in the picture. The entire Europe had only 10% share. America was nowhere. This is a very important point. But what happened after that? In 1750, here after 3 years after we got independence, share came down to 5%. So what happened after 1750 to 1950? 200 years we were under colonial rule. There are many studies on the exploitation, looting, and cruelty of Britishers from 1750 to 1950. There are many studies by eminent economists on the British rule in India, the economic exploitation they had, the plundering they had, the cruelty they had. An economy for a long period of 1750 years enjoyed a 25% share is not a simple thing for a long period. But with 200 years, they are reduced to 5% and it became one of the poorest nations in the world. Became one of the poorest nations on the eve of India's independence. But you should understand, we had this Swadeshi movement in the beginning of last millennium, in 1906, we had a Swadeshi movement in Bengal related to partition of Bengal, connection with the partition of Bengal. But we were successful against the partition. We united Bengal, but in 1906, Tisco was started. Tata Financial Company was started in 1906. You should know the capital for Tisco was mobilized within India. Within a short period of 2 weeks, we could mobilize. Capital for starting Tisco was mobilized within India within a short span of 2 weeks. But in 1956, you have studied in Indian economy. We have started 4 iron and steel factories in Bhilai, in Bokaro, for Durgapur. So we started 4 iron and steel factories. All these iron and steel factories were started with the foreign assistance, Germany's assistance, British assistance, or USSR assistance. So what happened after during a period of 1906 to 1956? These iron and steel factories were started during the second 5-year plan from 1956 to 1961. This was Nehru's vision. But we could materialize it with the domestic capital within a short period of 2 weeks in 1906. What happened to us after independence? We lost our direction. We became visionless. We became directionless, aimless. After independence, we had that issue. The spirit that we had through Swadeshi, where we were lost. So this is another point that I wanted to raise. But after independence, another mistakes we did. A nation enjoyed 25% share for a long period of 715 years, became a poor nation in 1950. But even after that, even after independence, what happened? We started imitating USSR model of development. Then the Prime Minister was fascinated by the USSR model of development, started to imitate and establish the USSR model of planning and economic development, and started financial companies. 4 financial companies were started with the foreign financial assistance, foreign technology assistance, foreign experience and expertise by sharing this. What happened? We had set socialist economy, socialism as our strategy and for economic development. What happened after 50 years? From 1950 to 2000, another 50 years. Given a very brief introduction. Even from 1950 to 2000, what happened? The leaders in 1950s and 60s wanted to make Indian economy a socialist economy. And they were inspired by the USSR model, socialist model. Where did we go? By the end of 1980s and beginning of 1990s, our GDP growth rate was less than 3%, 2%. So you may ask about what is the importance of GDP growth. GDP growth, it means producing more goods and services in the economy. It may lead to more employment generation. It may reduce poverty. It may reduce unemployment. It may generate more revenue to governments. That the revenue that will empower the government, it implement more and more welfare schemes. National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, Health Program, then Food for All Program. So these are the benefits of growth. But imitating socialist model in 1950s, started socialist strategy. By the end of 1980s and beginning of 1991, our growth rate was less than 2%, 3%. Unemployment growth rate was very high. Fiscal deficit, fiscal deficit, it is borrowing in a budget. Suppose budget is for 100 rupee. The government has its sources, revenue sources like a tax, non-tax. So collecting and combining all tax and non-tax, suppose it is 90 rupee. Then there is a gap of 10 rupee. That the 10 rupee the government may borrow. That borrowing in a budget is called fiscal deficit. That the fiscal deficit was very high. Industry growth rate was very poor. Then the foreign exchange reserve in 1990, beginning of June, July, it was $2 billion US. That was hardly sufficient for then the next 2 weeks import. And international lending agencies and countries, They had expressed doubt on India's credibility, made a default in repayment of loans. So where did we reach after implementing socialism? We reached nowhere. We became a poor nation even after 40 years of independence in the beginning of 1990s. So the same political party designed India's socialist path of development in 1950s and 1960s, made a U-turn in 1990s to take Indian economy into a market economy. So you may know the difference between socialist path of development and market economy path of development. In socialist path, the means of production are owned, controlled, and managed by the government, the state. In a market economy, the means of production are owned, controlled, and managed by private entrepreneurship. The spirit of entrepreneurship, the spirit of freedom, the spirit of accumulating capital and investing more, producing more goods, accelerating growth rates. But the spirit of Indians were curtailed, controlled, regulated by the governments in 1950s, 60s, and 70s. But even though it was liberated in the beginning of 1990s, we had no vision to come back to our Swadeshi Sramata or Swadeshi Sankalp of what inspired our freedom movement. We got independence because we got energy from our own spirituality, our own cultural roots, our own tradition, our own rivers, forests, and mountains. So that we lost in the beginning of 50s and 60s, that the government had no inner strength than in 50s and 60s. So we looked outside. We looked into US, we looked into USSR, we started imitating. But even after imitating and implementing foreign strategy, planning and 5-year plans and programs, we could not reduce poverty much. We could not generate employment, income. The government could not provide more and more employment to people. You should understand one thing. We see that MNREG scheme, that is Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee Program, it was making 100 days employment as a right. Then another is Right to Education Act was passed in 2009. Then Right to Food Act was passed in 2013. Then now the government of India, NDA government is giving and spending more and more on health infrastructure. How could we make all these legislations and spend more on revenue, more on health, education? Because even after 1990s, we could accelerate growth. Growth means more revenue to government. Revenue that empowers the fiscal capacity of the state, it implement and spend more on welfare schemes. But in 1950s, even in the first cabinet of Jawaharlal Nehru, there were 2 lady ministers, Rajkumari Amrut Kaur and Durga Devi Deshmukh. One was a child widow. Even though there were 2 lady ministers, women cabinet ministers in the Nehru cabinet, and these women leaders and the leaders of 1950s were convinced of India's poverty, India's starvation, India's child death, India's infant mortality rate. They could not to make more schemes for unemployment eradication. They could not to bring right to food as a fundamental right from directive principles. They could not bring the employment from directive principles to fundamental right. They could not legislate on education as a right, fundamental right. Why? The reason was the government in 1950 was not financially able. Why they didn't become financially able? Because of poor growth rates. And even though they were convinced of poor growth rates, they curtailed entrepreneurship, the spirit of entrepreneurship, and they gave more and more restrictions. They imposed more and more restrictions on private entrepreneurship. But now I will come to the point, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Because what? But after 1990s, at least we liberalized our economy. Liberalized economy means giving more freedom to private entrepreneurship. We started globalization, liberalization, privatization. So this reform that we introduced in 1990s, it is called the first generation of economic reforms. You should know first generation. What is first generation? First generation of economic reform is reform on product market. Product market, liberalizing import, liberalizing export. So in product market, reduce tariff, reduce duty, they make quota fee restrictions, abolishing quota restrictions, control Raj, license Raj, so giving at least some freedom to entrepreneurship. So the first reform that we introduced in 1990s was first generation that was in the product market. That was in the product market. But in 2001, after completing 10 years of economic reforms, the government attempted to start second generation economic reform. Second generation economic reform means deepening and widening the reform, intensifying and deepening reform from product market level to factor and input market level. What is the difference between product and factor? You know well, because you are commerce student. Factors of production, then the product you know well. I need not explain it at all. So in 2001 in the budget, then the finance minister Yashwant Sinha had very clearly mentioned about initiating second generation economic reform, intensifying and deepening reform from product market level to factor market level. The factors that we assemble, that we bring together to produce products in land market, labor market, capital market, entrepreneurship market. But unfortunately, that government was voted out of power in 2004. So the government could not bring and continue with such intensive reforms from 2001 onwards. There was a government from 2004 to 2014 that delayed the reforms in the product market, in the tax, then in entrepreneurship, then the spirit of investment, etc. But after 2014, the government under Narendra Modi leadership initiated reforms. GST is one reform through 101 constitutional amendment. The government of India created GST Council as a constitutional body in Article 279A. The GST Council is created to discuss and negotiate and fix on tax rates, especially indirect tax, no direct tax. Then implemented Jan Dhan Yojana, then JAM scheme, Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile, linking your mobile Aadhaar number with then your bank account. Financial transparency was attempted. Then money laundering, that there was some attempt to control it. All these were initiated after 2014, and the government of India also initiated third generation of economic reforms. Third generation economic reform. Third generation economic reform means the first generation was in the product market. Second generation was on factor market, land, labor, capital organization. Even still the reforms are pending in second generation reform, because labor market, some more reforms we need to make on labor market. Then the commodity movement market, the agricultural reforms government attempted, but there has been confusion. Confusion is being infused on people, on poor farmers, to agitate against the government on this historic reform in the farm sector. So this is second generation reform. Then third generation reform that has been initiated after 2014. Third generation reform is reform on institutional reforms. Replacing Planning Commission with the Niti Aayog is an institutional reform. The Planning Commission is an institution during of socialist period. Planning Commission has power of allocating funds. The deputy chairman has power to fix allocation of states. So that power is removed. Now we have created Niti Aayog, is based on Team India concept. The Prime Minister is discussing with the Chief Ministers of the state along with the senior ministers a level playing field. A level playing field to states and state political leadership, the administrative leadership is ensured through Niti Aayog concept. So this is an institutional reform. Then the GST Council through Article 279A is an institutional reform to decide and fix the tax rates for for commodities, that is for indirect taxes. Then about some more reforms are pending. One reform is in education, that is replacing UGC with the Higher Education Commission, and a series of reforms are being implemented. This we call institutional reforms. This is third generation reform. Then now that during that period, 2017, 18, 19, the world is gripped by, is targeted by widespread coronavirus that has its impact on economy. But prior to that, even before the impact of corona epidemic, the issue, the world economy was moving towards a post-globalization phase. A post-globalization. What do you mean by post-globalization? Globalization, you know well, it is free flow of capital, free flow of economy, free flow of goods and services, free flow of technology across borders, producing in one country, selling in another country, then technology from one place, labor from another country. So this is we call globalization. But what happened? By the end of 2017, 18, and in the early 90s, the world was moving towards a post-globalization. That is end of globalization. Countries are making their own barriers to regulate trade, to regulate investment, to engage in international treaties, covenants, and agreements, conventions. So there were many symptoms of this post-globalization in the 2018 and 19. One symptom was the election of Donald Trump. A person arguing against free trade was elected as the president of the United States. Britain, UK exited from the European Union, that is Brexit. Then many leaders of France, Germany, and other European countries were arguing against globalization. They were arguing against free trade, international movement of goods, international movement of capital, international movement of people, labor. So that was the background prior to spreading of coronavirus in 2019. So in that context, the world was extremely badly affected by coronavirus. And we know it has been explained by previous speaker, Vidyalayam sir, about its impact, etc. But here, now the core point is Atmanirbhar Bharat. I will speak about next 5 minutes. Atmanirbhar Bharat is rediscovering ourselves, our inner strength, our spirit of entrepreneurship, our spirit of patriotism, feeling for Indians. It is making goods for Indians and feeling for Indians, producing, exporting, consuming. All this is an attempt of rediscovering India's economic strength, economic history, our contribution from zero common era to 1715, and after 200 years, what we were exploited by colonial people, but we started attempting our rediscovery. So we lost many decades after independence because we were behind the Soviet Union and we were behind such Western European countries. So here, in Atmanirbhar Bharat, so the government of India, our Prime Minister has announced many schemes that has been explained by Vidyalayam sir about increasing fiscal deficit to 5%. Fiscal deficit to 5% means fiscal deficit I have explained to you. Fiscal deficit means it is borrowing by the government. It was restricted to 3% of GDP through FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act, passed in 2003. It had a restricted, made an imposition on borrowing. It was restricted. But now what happened? After the corona and its impact, it will recover and to revive Indian economy, the government hiked the FDP to 5%. The states can borrow more. Earlier it was limited to 3%. And the most strategic change is Indian entrepreneurs, foreign entrepreneurs were permitted to make investment in Indian defense production system. Indian defense production. We know crores of rupees scams we have heard in newspapers, and the issues are there pending still in the various high courts and supreme courts. So what is the issue? Our defense budget is around 2 lakh crore. It is more than that, 2 lakh crore. Almost half of defense budget is spent for buying arms and other related equipments from abroad. In abroad, who are producing this? It is produced by private entrepreneurs. In abroad, arms are produced by private entrepreneurs. Now the government of India made a strategic change in its defense procurement and defense production policy. We would invite that producers and they would be permitted to associate with Indian entrepreneurs and producers to produce arms and other equipments for Indian defense system, our paramilitary and our police system and our security system, and the remaining we would export. So this is a strategy. You know, even tear gas shells are exported from China. So our tears are also exported. Tears, when tear gas shell is used, tears would come out. Even tears are produced in China. So that must end. So this is one strategy we had. So such changes we have introduced after as part of Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is, I won't explain much on point by point, but the sum and substance of my point is, it is the Atmanirbhar Bharat is rediscovering ourselves, and it gives us confidence that India was a great nation for a long period, even the recorded history by A. Madison, and this attempt of the present government would bring back that glory, and India will be a powerful nation in Asian region, and India will be a guiding light for all other poor countries, and India will rediscover our yoga, Sanskrit, and other practices, meditation, spirituality. So India is the only nation that can lead the entire world into peace and harmony, because we have that tradition of our culture, spirituality for thousands of years. We are successful in that. It is the one and only nation that can bring harmony and peace in this conflict world. So I end this presentation because I know the time constraint. So thank you very much. Thank you, Parama Bhattara, Kendriya Vidyalayam. Thank you once again. Thank you.
വളരെ താല്പര്യത്തോടുകൂടി സംരംഭകരാകുവാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്ന താല്പര്യമുള്ള കൂട്ടുകാരെ ആദ്യം കണ്ടെത്തുകയും 1, 2, 3 ദിവസവും കഴിഞ്ഞ് വരുമ്പോൾ ഏറ്റവും അവസാനം വരെയും നിൽക്കുന്നവരിലാണ് പരമോട്ടാരയുടെ പ്രതീക്ഷ. അത് കണ്ടെത്തുക തന്നെയാണ് പരമോട്ടാരയുടെ വെബിനാറിന്റെ ലക്ഷ്യവും. അവരിൽ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ പ്രതീക്ഷ ഉണ്ട്. ഭാരതത്തിന് അത് ശക്തി പകരട്ടെ എന്ന് ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു. നമുക്കറിയാം, ഇപ്പോൾ ശ്രമതാ സങ്കല്പ് എന്ന ചടങ്ങ് നടക്കും. ശ്രമതാ സങ്കല്പിനെ പറ്റി നമുക്കറിയാം. ഈ 3 ദിവസവും വെബിനാറിൽ പങ്കെടുത്ത കൂട്ടുകാര് ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു സങ്കല്പമാണ്. മനസ്സിലൊരു സങ്കല്പം എടുക്കുന്നു, രാഷ്ട്രത്തിന്റെ വൈഭവത്തെ കാണുന്നു, ഒരു സംരംഭം തുടങ്ങി എന്ന് സങ്കല്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് അതിനെ വിജയപഥത്തിലെത്തിക്കുവാനുള്ള പരിശ്രമം നടത്തുന്നത് സങ്കല്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ഏറ്റവും ഒടുവില് വിജയിച്ച സംരംഭവും വിജയിച്ച ഭാരതത്തെയും മനസ്സിൽ കാണുന്ന മഹനീയമായ ഒരു ധ്യാനം നമ്മൾ എടുക്കാൻ പോവുകയാണ്. ആ സമയം എല്ലാവരും മ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്ത് ഇരിക്കും, നിശബ്ദമായിരിക്കും. പക്ഷേ ആ നിശബ്ദമായിരിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് നമ്മൾ ഒന്നിലും ചുറ്റും വീട്ടിലിരിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് മറ്റൊന്നിലും ശ്രദ്ധിക്കാതെ ഒരു 2-3 മിനിറ്റ് സമയം നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെയുള്ള സങ്കല്പം എടുക്കണം. സങ്കല്പത്തിന് തൊട്ട് മുൻപ് ഒരു 2 മിനിറ്റ് നീണ്ടു നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു വീഡിയോ നമുക്ക് കാണും. ആ വീഡിയോ നമ്മൾ കാണണം. വീഡിയോ കഴിഞ്ഞ ഉടനെ തന്നെ നമ്മുടെ ഈ വെബിനാറ് നടത്തുന്ന ഈ പരമോട്ടാരയുടെ വിദ്യാലയത്തിന്റെ മണ്ണിൽ ഒരു നിലവിളക്ക് കൊളുത്തി വയ്ക്കും ഇവിടുത്തെ ടീച്ചർമാര്. നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സിനെ ഉണർത്തുക എന്ന ആ ഒരു എനർജിയെ നമ്മുടെ ഹൃദയത്തിലേക്ക് നിറയ്ക്കേണ്ടതാണ് എന്നാണ് അതിനർത്ഥം. നമുക്ക് ആ ചടങ്ങിലേക്ക് പോകാം. ആദ്യം വീഡിയോയിലേക്ക് പോകുന്നു. ഇനി നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും ഒരു ശ്രമതാ സങ്കല്പത്തിലാണ്. എല്ലാവരും മ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്ത് നമുക്ക് ഈ വീഡിയോ കാണാം.
ഞാൻ ശ്രീഹരി പോലെ എൻ്റെ വീട് വണ്ടിപ്പേട്ടയാണ്. ഞാൻ പരമോട്ടാറിലെ പൂർവ്വ വിദ്യാർത്ഥിയായിരുന്നു. ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ 4th സ്റ്റാൻഡേർഡ് തൊട്ട് 10th വരെ അവിടെയാണ് പഠിച്ചത്. അവിടുന്ന് 2015 ഞാൻ അവിടുന്ന് പാസ് ഔട്ട് ആയിട്ട് പോകുന്നതാണ്. പിന്നെ ടീച്ചർ ദീപ്തി ടീച്ചറാണ് എൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാം ഉണ്ട്, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ശ്രീകോണ സാറും എൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് ഇങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞു. അപ്പൊ ഈ ഒരു പരിപാടിയുടെ ഒരു ഭാഗമാവാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞതിൽ വളരെയധികം സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. ഞാനിപ്പോ നിലവില് BBA ഏവിയേഷൻ ചെയ്യാണ്, ബാംഗ്ലൂരാണ്. നിലവില് ഒരു ഒരു ചെറിയൊരു പ്രസ്ഥാനമായിട്ട് ഇങ്ങനെ നടക്കുവാണ്. ഒരു ബസ് ഉണ്ട്, ടൂറിസ്റ്റ് ബസ് പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ട്. സ്വന്തമായിട്ടല്ല, ഞാൻ ഷെയർ ആയിട്ടാണ്, ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഫ്രണ്ടും കൂടെ ഷെയർ ആയിട്ടാണ് ഞങ്ങൾ നടത്തുന്നത്. പിന്നെ മെയിൻ ആയിട്ട് എനിക്ക് നിങ്ങളുടെ അടുത്ത് പറയാനുള്ളത് എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, നമ്മുടെ ഒരു ബിസിനസ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്കത് എന്താണ്, അത് എങ്ങനെയായാലും നമ്മളിപ്പോ നിൽക്കുന്ന സ്റ്റേജിനേക്കാൾ ഒരുപാട് അതിനെ നല്ല രീതിയിൽ ഉയർത്തിക്കൊണ്ടുവരാന്നുള്ള ആ ഒരു അങ്ങനെ വേണം. നമ്മൾ ഏതൊരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴാണേലും ബിസിനസ് ആണേലും നമ്മൾ ഏതൊരു കാര്യമാണ്, ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ പഠിത്തത്തോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഞാൻ ഡ്രൈവിങ്ങും അങ്ങനെ ഒരു ക്രൈസാണ് ഇതിനോടൊക്കെ. അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെ ദൈവത്തിന്റെ ഒരു അനുഗ്രഹം കൊണ്ടാണ് നമുക്കിപ്പോ ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു കാര്യം സാധിക്കാൻ പറ്റിയത്. ഇപ്പൊ മെയിൻ ആയിട്ട് നിങ്ങളുടെ അടുത്ത് പറയാനുള്ളത്, ഇപ്പൊ നിങ്ങള് ഒരു പഠിത്തമാണേലും എന്താണേലും, ഇപ്പൊ ഒരു പഠിത്തം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ബിസിനസ് അങ്ങനെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു ഇതായിട്ട് മുമ്പിട്ട് പോവുകയാണെങ്കിൽ തന്നെ നിങ്ങൾ മെയിൻ ആയിട്ട് അതിൽ തന്നെ കോൺസെൻട്രേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് പോവുക. നമ്മളെ പിന്തിരിക്കാനായിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് ആൾക്കാർ നമ്മുടെ പുറകെ ഉണ്ടാവും. നമ്മുടെ ഉയർച്ച കണ്ടിട്ട് നമ്മളെ താത്തി കളയാനും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ നെഗറ്റീവ്സ് പറയാനായിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് ആൾക്കാർ നമ്മുടെ അടുത്ത് ഉണ്ടാവും. പക്ഷെ നമ്മളതൊന്നും നമ്മൾ ഭാവിക്കാണ്ട് നമ്മൾ നമ്മുടെ കാര്യത്തിൽ കോൺസെൻട്രേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് പോയിട്ട് കഴിഞ്ഞ് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് ഉറപ്പായിട്ട് അതിനുള്ള റിസൾട്ട് കിട്ടിയിരിക്കും. ഞാനിപ്പോൾ ബസ് എടുക്കാൻ നേരത്തെ, ഒന്നാമത്തെ കൊറോണ ടൈമാണ്, അതുപോലെ തന്നെ എന്താ പറയാ, നമുക്ക് വലിയ കാര്യമായിട്ട് ഓട്ടോ കാര്യങ്ങളൊന്നുമില്ല, സ്കൂൾ ട്രിപ്പ് ഇല്ല, കോളേജ് ട്രിപ്പ് ഇല്ല, അങ്ങനെ ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങളുണ്ട് ഇപ്പൊ നിലവിൽ. അപ്പൊ എൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് ഒരുപാട് പേര് ചോദിച്ചു നിനക്ക് തന്നെ വല്ല വട്ടാണോ എന്ന് ചോദിച്ചു. അങ്ങനെ അതല്ല, അതിനും മോശമായിട്ട് സംസാരിച്ചാൽ എൻ്റെ കൂട്ടത്തിലുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ നമ്മളതൊന്നും കാര്യമാക്കാനുള്ള നമുക്കൊരു എയിം ഉണ്ട്. നമ്മൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു സംഭവത്തിൽ ക്ലിക്കായി പോകുന്നുള്ള ഒരു രീതിയിൽ നമുക്കൊരു എയിം ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇതുമായിട്ട് അങ്ങ് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. കാര്യം പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് ഒരുപാട് പൈസ റോളിങ്ങിന് വേണം, അതായത് ടാക്സ് അടയ്ക്കാൻ, അങ്ങനെ ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങളുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ നമുക്ക് ഒരു വിജയത്തിലെത്തും, അതായത് ഈ സംഭവം ഒന്ന് സക്സസ് ആവും എന്നുള്ള ഒരു വിശ്വാസം കൊണ്ടാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇത് കൈവിടാണ്ട് തന്നെ നമ്മൾ മുമ്പോട്ട് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. പിന്നെ ഞാനിത് അത് ആദ്യമേ പറയാം, ഞാനിത് സൈഡായിട്ട്, അതായത് ഞാനിപ്പോ നിലവിൽ പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഇത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് അടുത്ത കോഴ്സ് ചെയ്യണം, അങ്ങനെ ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങളിട്ട് വേറെ വേറെ പ്ലാനും കാര്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം ഉണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ഞാൻ സൈഡായിട്ട് ഇതും എന്താ പറയുക, ഇത് ഒരു നല്ലൊരു രീതിയിൽ എത്തിക്കണം എന്നുള്ള ഒരു മെന്റാലിറ്റിയിലാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇതിനായിട്ട് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്.
Your duty is more than giving thanks. I invite Siddharth K. Sujit for vote of thanks.
Over here, Honorable Chief Guest Sri Devidayal Sir and Dr. Priyesh CA, respected Principal Mr. Manoj Mohan, and all teachers and students gathered in this webinar. It is an honor for me to have the opportunity to give a vote of thanks on this special day. I, on behalf of the Commerce Department, Parama Bhattara Kendriya Vidyalayam School, extends a hearty vote of thanks to all delegates of this webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar exemplary. I extend my thanks to our Honorable Chief Guest, Sri Devidayal Sir and Dr. Priyesh CA to make out time from their busy schedule to grace the event. Further, a big thanks to Dr. Priyesh CA, Associate Professor, Department of Economics from University College of Trivandrum for the topic presentation. Thank you for inspiring and encouraging us with your words on this special day. A special thanks to our principal, Mr. Manoj Mohan, for providing the support to make the seminar successful. I extend my gratitude to Dhanya teacher and Srima sir for organizing a webinar which has attracted participants from several schools. I must not forget to thank the organizing team, volunteers, for working hard from the last few days to make this webinar successful. I congratulate all the students for their active participation. Thank you everyone once again for making it a great success.
A dream written down with a date becomes a goal. A goal broken down within steps becomes a plan. A plan backed up by action, making your dream come true. Jai Hind.